In the summer of 1967, a country western singer called Bobbie Gentry made a top 40 hit, a pop crossover, you might say, of a ballad that became her signature song. It was #1 on the charts for 4 straight weeks, excuse me. And anyone that was a child of the late 60s would certainly be familiar with the haunting story that the song told. I'm kind of working my way through this for those of you that will know the song, and I realize some of you may not know it at all. But the opening lyrics may trigger those of you that kind of remember what I'm talking about, but you're not really quite sure. Maybe you already know. It starts off this way. It was the 3rd of June, another sleepy, dusty Delta day. I was out picking cotton, and my brother was baling hay. Some of you may catch that, some of you may not. The story's talking about people being out in the field. The next detail is the mother comes to the back door and calls everyone to dinner, and she reminds them that they need to wipe their feet. And as they're moving into the house, she said, "I heard some news this morning from Choctaw Ridge. Today, Billie Joe McAllister jumped off the Tallahatchie Bridge." Maybe now many of you remember the haunting song about a young man who either had an accident or jumped off the bridge. You know, we don't really know. We just simply know that there's been this shocking death that has happened in the song. Over the years, it was a sensational hit, as I told you, #1 on the pop charts for 4 weeks. People kept asking Bobbie Gentry, why did Billie Joe jump off the bridge? Almost everyone that hears the song wants to know what happened to him. What was it that happened? What did it? Years later, a decade later, an unfortunate film was made called Ode to Billie Joe, the name of the song, that attempts to tell the story of the song. The film was not authorized by Bobbie Gentry, who wrote and sung the song, and therefore their version of what happened, she rather clearly told everyone, that's not it. People continually asked her, why did Billie Joe jump off the bridge? And she never answered their question. To this day, the question remains unanswered. When she was willing to speak about it, she said, the song really isn't about Billie Joe. It's actually about how the young girl, who's the voice of the song, and the family reacts to the shocking news of his death. Some other details are pulled out in the story songs, particularly for those of you that remember, they're sitting around the dinner table basically. And the matter-of-fact way that this discussion takes place after the receiving of this rather shocking, unsettling news, the father says, you know, Billie Joe never had a lick of sense. And then he follows it, pass the biscuits, please. Then he says, I've got 4 more acres in the lower 40. I've got to plow. You know, the brother then recalls that there was a time he dropped a frog down Billie Joe, the narrator's back, and Billie Joe helped him at a movie theater. And then the mother finally notices in the 3rd verse of the song, she said to the girl who's the singer of the song, child, what's happened to your appetite? I've been cooking all morning and you haven't touched a single bite. The family seems to be unable or unwilling to recognize that the young woman, the singer of the song, is severely traumatized by the shocking news that she's just received. A little details dropped in there from the mother, who said after the preacher had stopped by and wanted to have dinner next week, and then, oh, by the way, he said he saw a girl who looked a lot like you up on Choctaw Ridge, and she and Billie Joe was throwing something off the Tallahatchie Bridge. That was another mystery of the song. What was it that the singer and Billie Joe threw off the bridge? The unfortunate film said it was a rag doll. Ugh. Bobbie Gentry said, it's not important what was thrown off the bridge. It's only important that the mother comes up with this detail in the middle of this story, and the daughter, of course, still traumatized by what's happened. The song has an epilogue, which is wonderful. I mean, a year passes for the final verse of the song, and in the epilogue, it says that a year has come and gone since we heard the news about Billie Joe. She mentions her brother got married and moved off to Tupelo, and then there was a virus going around, and her father caught it and died last spring. And now her mother doesn't want to seem to do much of anything. And if you know the song, you know those final words of the song. They're so haunting. She says, me, I spend a lot of time picking flowers up on Choctaw Ridge and throw them into the muddy waters off the Tallahatchie Bridge. I have always loved that song, and like many others, was beguiled by the mystery of it, but became even more beguiled when I learned that there was no mystery to it, that it was really a song about grief and loss and not so much a song about suicide or accident, that it was a detail that was important to move the narrative of the song, but that it's really about the more universal theme of how it is you and I respond to the traumatic events that happen in our life. Ode to Billie Joe's been on a number of my playlists that I have from Apple Music. It's on my favorite 60s playlist, and it's on a couple of other different ones that I put together for different reasons. And so it was, just simply about a month ago, in fact, it was in the second week of June, when I was in Angola, Indiana, that I suddenly heard this song, and the first words jumped right out at me. It was the 3rd of June, another sleepy, dusty Delta day. Why did it jump out at me? Because it was the 3rd of June, 1994, when in that very town of Angola where I was visiting, my friend Michael was buried, and I attended his burial, the funeral happening in Indianapolis the day before. It was a week of consequence for me, as I had just been approved by the Archbishop to enter into the seminary, where I was going to leave my employment with the Justice Department and then go to the seminary in the fall. And the burial of my friend was very clearly an important moment that was happening. So I was there on the 3rd of June. You know, the whole thing about the burial, and what I need to say about this, is that Michael is it was my best friend. I would clearly tell you he is my soulmate, and I would add to that is the most important and consequential relationship in my life. And it was on the 3rd of June in Angola that he was laid to rest. The reason the song jumped out at me so many years later is why I was in Angola just a few weeks ago. Some of you know that I went there, but you didn't know the reason for my going. The reality is this, that in 26 years I have never been back. And it was time for me to go visit his grave. It was time to me to confront the tragedy that had happened. It was an epic event that had happened in my life. The time to go to me to find if there was any closure to be had in doing so. Maybe, and you know, when it started, I had my reasons. I was, first of all, living in Washington, D.C., and Angola was far away from there. I was moving, so that was going to be a problem. Then I started graduate school. You know, the seminary program's very busy, very time-consuming. The family wrote me in the spring to let me know Michael's headstone had been put in place, and that was the other reason not to go. There's no headstone. What's there to go see? Once I knew the headstone was in place, well, it was spring semester. Papers to be written, exams to be taken. I'll get there some other time. Summer came and I was placed into a parish. In fact, that's where I met Pip Hines for the first time at Holy Spirit. Filled with activities that summer. There were weekends where I would have been free to go, but I thought, this is not a good time for me to make that visit. If you catch my drift now, the last 26 years, there's always been a rash of reasons why I've never gone back to Angola, Indiana. I would tell myself that it's been so long now, what would be the point? Or I would tell myself, I'm going to find that so upsetting, so awful, that it's bad enough as it is, it's going to be worse. What I can tell you is that I just simply didn't go. Some of you have attended my funerals. I know you haven't, so not my funerals, the funerals that I celebrate. And I preach often in those funerals how important it is to visit the cemetery. And I believe that. I say the cemetery is a place where we can encounter, through holy remembering of the people that love and matter to us the most. It's where we can experience their presence in a very unique kind of way that we can't in any other kind of way, while at the same time embracing the mystery of whatever it means for them to be in heaven and the promise God makes that one day we'll all see each other again. Those words tumble effortlessly from my mouth over the last 21 years as I've preached, and I think it's such a surprise to learn that I was utterly unable to follow my own advice. If you read the bulletin column last week, I kind of told the story. I thought it was important enough to preach it at both parishes while you're hearing it after the bulletin column on my St. James weekend. But the reality was that even though I can tell you how important it is for you to do something, I found myself utterly unable to make that move. The last few years have been unsettling, as you know, for us at St. James particularly, with all the consternation over the school and all kinds of real emotional issues that came with that. And all of that triggered my unresolved grief about Michael and having never visited his cemetery. I finally went into counseling, the smartest thing I've ever done. And of course, the other thing about counseling, if you've ever gone into counseling, and I recommend it when you need it, is the counselor is not going to let you rationalize. That's the whole point, that you're paying them for them to point out the truths that you need to confront in your lives. And so rather gently, my counselor began to move me in the direction of making a plan to go visit Michael's grave. Oddly enough, it was earlier this spring, in fact, later this spring, when I was watching one of those series that you watch on television. All of us are sequestered in our houses, so you can binge watch these programs. This was something like Grey's Anatomy, but it wasn't that. And the thing about those shows are they have a music soundtrack to them with different songs, usually obscure songs, songs that nobody really knows. So a little piece of a song jumped out at me. It was a British singer. Her name was Freya Ridings. Never heard of her. And she had this really mournful, soulful voice. And it was used underneath a really touching scene that had absolutely nothing to do with death. And I was intrigued by the song, and I finally YouTubed it. You can YouTube anything, you know, to actually learn what was the name of the song. Freya Ridings' song is called Lost Without You. And I downloaded the song so I could listen to the lyrics. The lyrics of the song shattered that veneer of self-control that had kept me away from Michael's grave for 26 years like nobody's business. The song Lost Without You, which makes you confront the painful reality of death with hard, bracing words, were transformative to me. I'm going to share a part of that song with you. It says in the chorus, "I think I'm lost without you. I feel just crushed without you. I've been strong for so long that I never thought how much I needed you. I think I'm lost without you." The song continues. "Strangers rushing past, just trying to get home. But you're the only safe haven I've ever known." Here's the part that jolted me. "Hits me at full speed, feels like I can't breathe, and nobody knows the pain inside me. My world is crumbling. I am lost without you." The shattering experience of that song also gave me an explanation for the dark hole, that I was lost. The thing that I couldn't name, the thing I couldn't understand, the thing I wouldn't speak about was the sense of loss. And if I covered that notion of being lost and how do I find myself, it was so painful, so difficult that I chose not to do it. Hence those rationalizations of not going there. What if I go there and feel nothing? That would be awful. What if I go there and have a mental breakdown? That would be embarrassing. What if I go there, I had all my little what ifs and all of that. But the whole notion that I was lost, I could resonate with that. I was lost, but now how is it that I can be found? This from a man who preaches this and counsels people on a regular basis about how we confront our loss, and yet how difficult and challenging confronting that loss is. Well, I've held you to suspense too long. It was already in the column from last week, but when I made the visit to Angola the first time, there's been a subsequent visit now. When I made it the first time, the counselor's insistence that I do this, I went with great trepidation driving up, very emotional, very concerned, fearful that I was basically unlocking something, putting myself into something that was going to not end well. And when I finally got to Angola, some 4 hours away from Louisville, and got to the cemetery, and the GPS now takes you right directly to where the grave is, and got out of the car, I was floored by the reaction that I had, that I so feared for 26 years. I found peace. Now, I'm not going to say my problem vanished away. This is a profound moment of grief and a profound loss in my life, and I'm being delicate here about all of this sort of thing. But the one thing I did not think I would find was peace. What's that peace come from? It was this sense of Michael's presence and the sense that I had been lost. The thing is, a part of me had been buried in that ground, and I couldn't put my finger on it except that it was gone and it would never come back again, that part of me that was there. And I got it back standing there. That was the peace. I was no longer lost. I was able to do many things that week that were healing, pick flowers that could be arranged in there. And then just 2 weeks ago, I went back for now vacation and actually spent a good, more solid period of time just simply with a chair, with a book, with my prayer book, all kinds of different things. And it's just been the most wonderful thing for me. It's the beginning of healing that will have a long road to go. But I can now say in front of you, I'm no longer as lost as I was before. Perhaps you can say I'm a wounded healer. In the gospel today, just in case you thought I was never going to get there, normally I place the gospel in the second move, but this week I put it to the third move of the homily. In the gospel today, Jesus is confronted by a woman from Canaan. He's moved to the region of Tyre and Sidon, which is outside of the Jewish domain, and there's a woman there who's tormented by demons, and she first shrieks out, "Somebody help me," and Jesus doesn't answer her. Then the disciples are annoyed by her shouting, and so she keeps shouting, "Make her go away," and he doesn't say anything to her. The woman persists and then comes into the room and confronts Jesus and asks him to heal her, and he says that the food of the children should not be thrown to the dogs. My goodness, what an insult, right? And then she answers back, "Even the dogs enjoy the crumbs that fall from the table of the master." Then Jesus replies, so very surprising. He actually acknowledges her pain, and he says, "O woman of great faith, your daughter will be now healed." What he's really doing in that moment was teaching his Jewish, clueless disciples about what faith really means. He wasn't insulting the woman. He was drawing her answer out. He was aware of her persistence, aware of her longing to have some healing that only he could possibly provide. And it was this illustration that's so married in my mind up with those lyrics to the Ode to Billie Joe. The first portion of that parable reads like that song. There's the father who's talking about plowing a field when the daughter is traumatized over the death. There's the mother who's worried about if the food's going to be eaten, and the brother who deflects it with a humorous story. All these things that happen there are just like you see up front in the parable. But unlike the unresolved grief in the song Ode to Billie Joe, Jesus resolves the woman's grief and allows us to see that it's his presence and our faith in him is the only thing that matters. In the summer, late summer of 2013, was the summer that my father suddenly became gravely ill with cancer. There was about a 10-week process from when we got the gruesome diagnosis, and then his death came. And it was 10 weeks of, well, just utter stress. There were 5 siblings in the family, plus my mother at the time, and every one of us with a different opinion about what should be done. Many of you have been in the same situation. What everyone's looking for is an answer everyone agrees to, and the problem is there is no answer that everyone agrees to. Any sense of normalcy is completely upended by the situation that you're encountering. I remember not very helpfully observing at the hospital one evening with my Roman collar on, "This is a train wreck," as if somehow everybody did not know this was already a train wreck. It was just simply a flood of different emotions. And I was struck by, as I think about it later now, looking for what is the best thing to do right now, as if there is a best thing if you just simply look long enough. You know, the thing isn't when we're in trauma, there is no best thing. We're being traumatized. When we're experiencing a profound mystery, suffering, and death, there is no best thing. There's only simply the journeying through it. I found my answer in a very unusual place. Father Getz, you all remember him, the pastor here a couple times before me, invited the priest to Eucharistic adoration once a month, and we were going to St. Boniface. It was on a Tuesday morning in September. And I remember going over there for adoration for priests, and I had my phone with me with my father in a grave condition. I wanted to make sure people could reach me. And lo and behold, when we began, the phone buzzed, and I see the text message from my sister, the one who was handling things the worst, who announced by text message that she was removing, against the doctor's order, my dad from the nursing home we had put him in and bringing him home. This was the mother of all train wrecks. I remember thinking at that moment, I'm going to have to get up and go, as if there was something I could do about that. And then catching myself, I'm in adoration, I'm before the Lord, almost paralyzed. I couldn't get up. So instead, I picked up my breviary, my prayer book that I had brought with me, and I thought I could calm myself down by praying the divine office. I opened up the prayer book, and the first psalm for the office of readings, it's always Tuesday of the first week of those 4 weeks in the breviary, the phrase in there, surrender to God, and he will do everything for you. Well, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Now, this didn't solve my problem, nor did it alleviate my stress, but there it was. Surrender to God, and he will do everything for you. Oddly enough, on all the options we were dealing with about what to do about my dad, whether he should be here, there, the other thing, how we're going to do this, will he be in pain, what's going to happen to us, all of that, there were no answers to that except surrender to God, and he will do everything for you. My dear parishioners, what we've come here this morning to do is an act of surrender. That's what we do in the Eucharist. We surrender to the mystery of God. Nothing about what's about to happen makes any sense to us at all. Calvary and the sacrament, not reenacted, but actually made present to us in the altar, and our coming forward to receive the body and blood of Jesus Christ. But you know what happens when we come forward? We have to make a surrender. We have to first surrender the idea that we're ever going to understand the mystery, because we are never going to understand the mystery. And we have to surrender the idea that it's some type of pill that's going to make our problem go away or make our stress be alleviated. I like the way it says in the embolism after the Our Father, protect us from all distress. I never feel protected from distress. I'm sure you don't either. I don't want any distress. That's what we want. And in the middle of this pandemic, for the love of God, so many of us have been completely thrown off. What we really want is for everything to go back the way it was. And that's never going to happen. You know, when Michael's death jarred me, and it still jars me, there was now a new normal. The new normal was Gary entering into the seminary and becoming a priest and finding new meaning in his life. But it was not something I could just do immediately, and I couldn't just discard what happened before as if it was irrelevant. I would have to grow into that new normal, and so it is with us. In the losses that we have, in the pain that we experience, in the struggles that we encounter in this life, and every one of you has your own versions of those particular struggles. We never know the right thing to do. What we wish we could do was pick the option that would make it all go away, make it just evaporate, you know, like a child wishing something. But the reality teaches us that it doesn't go away. But we're told again and again, surrender to God, and he will do everything for you. When we receive Holy Communion, that is the act of surrender. God meets us where we are, even if we don't like where we are, even if we think emotionally we need to be in a better place, spiritually we need to be in a better place, medically we need to be in a better place. Almost every one of us has some objection about how things are not right now. But God does not look for the moment that's opportune. He doesn't look for the moment when everything is perfect. He doesn't look for any of those things. He encounters us where we are and communicates his presence to us. How many times I've said this in the hospital room, particularly when someone's on the brink of death, and I've anointed them. I believe this with every fiber of my being, that when we do the sacramental anointing, the person, even if they're not awake, is aware that Jesus is touching them. He is in their new normal, and he's telling you, I'm not gone, I'm right here. And you see, only by surrendering to his presence and allowing his presence to be everything can we possibly find peace. That's what happens when we die. We surrender finally, we expel the last bit of breath, and Jesus says what's past that last bit of breath is not terror, it's not mystery, it's not darkness, it's blessed peace. We're not there yet. You're still alive. Last time I checked, I'm still alive as well. I've got some living to do. And because we've got living to do, we've got suffering to do. And we also have pain to experience. And we have mysteries that we're not going to understand. But when we can remember every time we encounter the Lord, particularly in sacrament, that he's right where we are, we can know that the real mission of our life isn't to figure everything out. We won't. It's to cross the finish line, but not the way we think we will. Our real mission of our life turns out to be very simple. Those words that opened my heart years ago before my father's death: surrender to God, and he will do everything for you.